And I'm sure there's a song that everybody references whenever your name is brought up.
Yeah.
So you know what song that is? I have to bring this up because I have had AC/DC going in my mind all morning, and I would sing it, but I no.
Thunder. You're listening to Who Cares About Men's Health, where we try to give you some information, inspiration, and a different interpretation of your health. I'm producer Mitch. Scott, Troy, and I are taking a little bit of a break for the next few weeks. We'll be recharging our batteries and working on some new episodes that I'm sure you're going to love. In the meantime, we've put together some best of episodes highlighting some of the very best moments over the past 145 episodes. Wow, 145 episodes. We'll share what we've learned about the Core 4, showcase some of our different series, and feature some of our very favorite guests. On this episode, we have our favorite nutrition specialist, Thunder Jalili. He's been a regular guest since the beginning, and his simple approach to diet is so refreshing compared to the stuff some of us guys see in magazines and on places online. I know he's completely changed my perspective on the food that I eat. So without any further ado, here is the very best of Thunder Jalili.
So what is exactly healthy eating? I mean, that's a term that's kind of thrown around a lot, right? And it depends on who you talk to. Like if somebody talked to me, I'd have a whole different definition than maybe Troy, than maybe yourself, or than maybe when you go to the internet, which is like, you gotta eat all protein, man. It's all paleo all the time. That's the internet. That's my impersonation.
That's what I do. I mean,
that's my impersonation of the internet. Yeah, right.
Just gnawing hunks of beef all the time.
Yes, exactly, right?
I kill my own food. And
if you didn't kill it, you shouldn't eat it.
Yeah, if you can't kill it with your bare hands, it should not be eaten.
So what is healthy eating exactly? Is it fewer microwave burritos? Is it more healthy food? I mean, what's that balance?
So I have a really simple thing that I talk to like with a lot of the freshmen that come into my intro nutrition class.
We like simple. That's good.
Yeah, because there is so much information out there about what is healthy and what is not. But the simplest way to look at it is if it is a whole food that is not packaged or processed, that is the healthiest form of food. So we were talking about like bananas, before the podcast. Like there's a great example of a healthy snack.
But on the internet, I think I saw a thing that said you should never eat bananas. This is the one food you should not eat if you're trying to lose body fat.
Yes.
I've seen that too.
But the microwave burritos are okay.
Yeah, but bananas?
Yeah. The thing is, natural foods tend to have less calories, less sugar, and less sodium than other foods that are processed. So if you really want to eat healthy, just try to cut out the stuff that is processed and focus on natural foods. It's really not that hard, and it's not like particle physics where it's really complex. You just go after stuff that came from a tree, came from a plant that is somehow unprocessed, and try to avoid the things that are in a box. Now you can't always do that. I understand that, but you try to minimize the stuff that came into a box or at fast food. Like, a few exceptions like oatmeal can come in a box or come in a bag. That's okay.
Yeah. As long as the ingredients say oatmeal.
Oatmeal, yeah. Like the
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. The unprocessed, either 1 minute oats or old fashioned oats, those are the way to go. Not the stuff that's in a box that has
apple cinnamon.
Because it's interesting. If you actually look at one of those little paper packets of like Quaker instant oatmeal, I mean, not to slam on all things Quaker, but if you look at that and you look at the amount of sugar that's in a packet, it's about 30% or more of the weight of that little paper packet is sugar.
Oh, wow.
So that means
That's unbelievable. 30%?
At least. And some flavors that you get have more sugar. So it depends on the flavor, right?
Wow.
So I tell people, why don't you just buy your own oatmeal, and then you can add kind of stuff that you want to it, and you can control the composition of the ingredients.
Right, like natural fruit. If you want to put a little natural fruit or some almonds or a little dollop of honey.
Exactly. Or like peanut butter, or you can put like walnuts in there. You have all kinds of flexibility, and then it's actually filling because the paper packets, they're actually quite small. In order to get the amount of fiber that you need, like if you're interested in reducing your heart disease risk, there's a specific amount of fiber you need. That paper packet doesn't cut it. You usually have to have at least 2 or 3 of them. Now, if you do that, you've also plowed through at least 60 grams of sugar, which is a lot. That's as much as you have in, say 18 ounces of Coke, more or less. So, I mean, that doesn't seem so healthy. But if you make your own oatmeal, you're not going to have that much sugar.
So I love it. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like just the whole message you're sending here is just keep it simple. Look at ingredients, very simple ingredient lists, ideally stuff that's not even in a box.
Yeah.
And you'll be eliminating so many of these hidden sugars, things that are just in there that we probably have no idea that are in there.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have an idea that they're in there because they are hidden. You know, flavored yogurt is another great example. You know, there's a lot of sugar in flavored yogurt. I mean, it tastes great because it usually has, you know, a couple tablespoons of sugar.
And it doesn't take much sugar to crank up those calories either.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. And, you know, I mentioned earlier, there is like a route between eating sugar and having that eventually be converted to LDL cholesterol.
All right. So it sounds like if somebody wanted to start taking steps to watching their eating, it's just start trying to eat more natural foods.
Yes.
And start pushing out some of those canned, processed, packaged foods. And that would be a good first step.
Yeah. And then, you know, and if people travel, people have jobs, people are on the road. I mean, those are the times where you maybe can't stick to what you do. So fine, don't beat yourself up if you have to get processed stuff or fast food. Sometimes that's the way it is. But when you're home and when you're in your regular routine and you can control it, that's when you follow it. And in reality, for most of us, that's 80% of our time.
If somebody's trying to lose weight, there are so many diets out there. There are so many ways you can go. And the internet is always screaming at you, this is the best one. This is the best one. You should be eating all protein. You should eat all fat, all grapefruit. What is the best one?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is kind of hard to decipher. I will say there's a lot of healthy eating option varieties on what we talked about. So there's not just one diet I can pick to be perfect. I will say, though, about diets in general is you want to pick something you can kind of live with, because for me personally, it doesn't make any sense to go on this weird eating pattern that you just want to lose like 10 pounds or 20 pounds, and it's completely different than what you normally eat, and you don't really like it, but you do it to lose the weight. And as soon as you lose the weight, you know, you abandon everything. You're like, oh, good, now I can go back to normal. You want to pick something that kind of is normal and use that healthy normal to help as one of your tools to lose weight. Now, beyond that, I think a lot of what people maybe don't appreciate is their timing of eating in an effort to lose weight. And what I mean by timing is, you know, our bodies are engineered to have like a kind of a fed state where we're utilizing nutrients and we're building stores for the future, and then have a fasting state, which is basically like prevent defense, you know, to use a football analogy, where, you know, we can kind of keep things going without like completely falling apart. And we're meant to go back and forth between those two. And we usually don't, because what happens is we're always in this fed state. The typical person, you know, wakes up in the morning, whenever they have to wake up for work or school, you know, 6, 7, 8 o'clock, whatever. And then they start eating with breakfast, and they have snacks, and they have lunch, and they have afternoon snacks, and they have dinner, and then they have something after dinner, and then, you know, whatnot. And then it goes on till, say, 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And then they go to bed whenever they go to bed, you know, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if you look at the totality of that, you end up having this condition where most people have some amount of food every 2 or 3 hours for 16 hours in the day, from 7 a.m. until like 10 p.m. That really keeps your insulin levels up the whole day. It keeps you in this fed state the whole day. The fed state is characterized by building fat and building things. And it gives you just a limited time to be in what we call the fasting state. And so you kind of lose out on that opportunity to really get into a fat burning condition, which happens after you've been food free for, say, you know, 12 hours or 14 hours or 16 hours. So what I would tell people to think about is do whatever healthy eating pattern you can live with to lose weight, and watch your calories if you want. You don't have to restrict yourself too much, but then think about how long you are without food. And that should be a minimum of 12 hours. And if you're 14, that's even better. You know, some people do 16, that's okay too. But the point is there has to be that sustained amount of time. It doesn't have to be the exact same timing every single night. But the point is some timing. Because again, you think about, you know, what were humans like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 years ago? You know, we're like, you know, Troy and I are running around in the forest looking for something to eat. Troy finds a squirrel and he strangles it. And that's his meal. And then,
that's what I still do. That's my morning routine.
Where am I in this scenario? Was I killed by the saber-tooth a couple weeks ago? I'm no longer around, or what?
You would not have survived 20, 30,000 years ago, Scott. I'm sorry. Just me and thunder.
You're probably right. I have allergies and I'm nearsighted, so
you would not have made it.
Survival of the fittest. But after Troy eats the squirrel, he may not get lucky and find another squirrel until the next day.
Yeah.
So, it would be terrible if he just basically dropped and couldn't function anymore because he had to go 20 hours without food. So our physiology is meant to keep us going, to have these alternate, macronutrient options that we can utilize for energy. And we have a progression we go through, and starts with glycogen in the liver, and then it can go to your fat stores. But you just need enough time for that to occur. And I think that is what we miss a lot in modern society with our constant snacking.
And this is, it's really a different way of thinking, because we focus so much on what we eat. And you're just saying it's more about the pattern where we're eating and having this period of fasting on a regular basis.
Yeah, I would say it's just as important. I don't know if it's more important, but it's just as important. And yeah, you're right. We focus just on what we're eating, and we don't pay enough attention to this. Like I had one of my college buddies. It's funny. We were talking about a week ago, and he has lost about 10 pounds recently. And he's a really fit guy. He works out. He rides bikes. He's my age, and he looks great. But he was a little bit of excess fat. He lost about 10 pounds. He said what he did is he just tried to go for this bigger period at night where he's just allowing himself to get into a fasting state. And he used to be the kind of guy who would have to have like a protein shake before bed because that's going to build muscle. And when he cut that out, he lost like 10 pounds in a fairly quick amount of time. And you think about it, those protein shakes, those can be 500 to 800 calories, and they're going to bump up your insulin, and your insulin levels will be high for a few hours, and then, or at least higher than baseline, and then your glucagon won't really have a chance to get up and be sustained at a high level, because next thing you know it, you're waking up at 6, 7 a.m. to get ready to go to work, and you're having your breakfast and whatever else.
So you've completely rocked my world here, and I've got to untangle a few things with you here, because there was a notion at one point that you should graze throughout the day, eat healthy throughout the day, every 3 hours. So I followed the zone diet for a while, which I think is a pretty good eating plan. It's 40, 30, 30 nutrition. You figure out your calories based on your lean mass. It tends to be, fairly healthy.
Yeah.
But they're saying you should eat every 3 to 5 hours, and you should have a little snack before bed. You're contending maybe not the best idea.
Yeah. I'm okay with the eating 3 to 5 hours. That's fine. But as long as you work out that period at night.
14, 16 hours.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Like shoot for, and 16 is hard for some people. At least shoot for 12 to 14.
All right.
At least
sounds
shoot
like
for that.
12 to 14 seems very practical. If you're eating at 6 and you don't eat again until 8 the next morning, you're at 14.
Yeah.
14, 16 hours. I'm afraid that there's going to be some hunger that I'm going to deal with. And I know when I'm hungry, then I start making poor decisions, like straight to the cookie dough, right? And then that's
just give up.
Yeah, I do. Like I go into crisis mode.
Yeah.
So is there a way that you would recommend to manage that, or do I just need to man up?
Yeah.
Deal with it.
Get used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it, but I'll tell you what, I think the hunger is not as bad as you think, because what I've noticed with,
like we said, Scott, you would not have survived 20,000 years
remember
ago.
that thing in the woods?
Yeah.
Go on, guys.
We would be using you as the decoy for the cave bear who's after us.
Wow.
But what I've noticed with myself and with other people who've done this sort of approach, you actually kind of feel hungry about 5 or 6 or 7 hours after your meal, and then it goes away. And most of the time when I wake up in the morning, even if I was a little hungry when I went to bed, I am not hungry at all in the morning. And that's pretty common, and you get used to that. So short answer, man up. You'll get through it really quick, and you'll be surprised. It won't be that bad in the morning.
Here's my thing. When vegetarian food starts to try to pretend it's meat, that's when it fails in my mind.
But a bean burger is not a burger. It's a bean sandwich. To me, that's a different thing.
Why do you think men should understand macros, and what is the benefit of understanding the macros that we're putting in our body?
And by macros, you're talking protein,
carbs, fats.
Fats.
Yes.
So I think it's important to understand macros, because I see misconceptions about macronutrients that drive people into funny food behavior. So in other words, like some people who will avoid certain types of vegetables or certain types of fruits because they're concerned about carbohydrates, or some people that go out of their way to eat excessive amounts of animal protein because they're so concerned about getting enough protein. So the macros on their own are not harmful, but having misconceptions can really make you do funny things with your diet that may not give optimal health.
And I have to admit, that's exactly part of my journey, because I would have these perceptions that I needed to get a lot of protein. So then a lot of my meals would revolve around, 4 or 5 ounces of chicken, eliminating other things, right? Or I would think carbs are bad, so I might not eat rice, which actually is rather healthy for you, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was absolutely doing what you just said. It was kind of skewing my perception of the things that I eat.
Take that to a practical level and you're thinking about, well, I need to get so much protein, so I'm going to make the center of my plate like steak or chicken or something like that. So you may end up consuming a lot of that, and that kind of makes you full, and you really don't have that much room left on your plate for vegetables or for fruits or for beans or for other things that have clear health benefits. And it may not be because you don't want to eat them, but because you've already eaten so much of the meat that you just don't have that much room left. So that's kind of what I see, macronutrient misconceptions leading to.
So back to Dr. Madsen's question here, how much protein does a person really need, and are we getting enough, or are we getting too much?
Yeah, great question again, and that's really dependent on the individual. And why don't we pick on Troy and use him as an example?
Please, that's what I'm here for.
Troy, how much
Yes.
do you weigh? You get to share it with all the listeners.
So Scott, do you know how much I weigh?
Well, no, I was going to jump in.
I know the answer.
Scott knows.
I know.
He's 157.
155. How did you know that? Have we talked about this?
Yeah, I used to work at a carnival. The guy that would guess
Clearly
weights.
did.
So
How old am I?
That was another.
When's his birthday?
That was
When's my
another.
birthday?
That
Yeah.
was another guy's game.
No, that was the other guy. You're good at the weight.
Yeah, I was
You're
good at the
pretty
weight.
good. Yeah, I stay right about 155.
Okay.
So when you ask this question, is it amount that you weigh or amount of lean tissue that you have?
Yeah, it's a loaded question. For if you have a healthy body weight, you go with the amount that the person weighs. If the person is very overweight, then we may have to consider, a different calculation.
All right.
But since Troy is in great shape and he's lean, we're going to go with his body weight of 155. And we need to do a little bit of math. We'd have to convert his body weight into kilograms. So we got to divide 155 by 2.2. And while you're doing that,
math,
Scott,
Scott.
Troy, I'm going to ask you, how would you characterize your activity level? Do you think you're somewhat, normal activity, kind of borderline sedentary, or do you make an effort to exercise and be active on a daily basis?
I exercise and I'm active.
Okay. So for someone who exercises, not like an elite level athlete, but they exercise, say, 5 days a week and they're semi-active, then we'd probably think that they're going to need 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Okay.
So once we get his weight in kilograms, which we have
Probably
at
a
70,
little bit low.
we would just multiply it by, say 1, and that would give you 70 grams. If you
Okay.
want to have a range, like on your sedentary days, maybe you would need 0.8 times 70, which is 56 grams. I do my math right? Or on an active day, you'd do 1.2 times 70, and what does that come out? 84.
So 84.
Oh, that's
So
super
that's
low.
your range. And,
That's all you
it's
need.
always like that. Most people need less protein than
Yeah.
they actually think. So if I have, like a university student who plays tennis or is on a ski team or is a basketball player, on like the University of Utah team, and they're always working out and they're very active, maybe I would put them at around 1.5 or 1.7 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and you'd come up with a level like was recommended for you, Scott. But for us, as regular guys who exercise and recreate for fun, we just don't need that much.
Even that 1.5 only puts Troy at 105 grams.
Correct.
So still nowhere near the number that I thought I needed to get.
Yeah.
That changes a lot in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
But just to reiterate, even if I'm super active, you're talking like you're super athletes, high performing athletes, even in those cases, someone like myself with my weight, even in those cases, it's only like up to 105 grams of protein a day that you're recommending. That's all you need.
Or if you're a triathlete, 70 kilograms, you're a triathlete, so you're training like crazy. Maybe you need 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. It's 140 grams of protein.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's even questionable.
Yeah.
And that's, again, You look at the amount in most meat products. If you're eating a lot of meat, you're probably well over that every day.
Yeah.
I want to have producer Mitch step in. We were talking about the number of grams of protein we're eating. At one point, Mitch, this is what happens when you go onto the internet and you decide you want to be all ripped. You end up eating 200 grams of protein a day.
That's
200
fantastic.
grams a day.
That's heroic. What was that like?
Hi, I'm Mitch, and apparently I don't know how to care about my health.
It's all right, Mitch.
So last summer we were going to be, me and my partner were going to be on camera on a documentary, and we're like, we better get tight. We better put some muscle on. And one of the calculations that we found online, it stuck me around 1.8 to 2 grams per pound, not lean body mass. Yeah. And so I was at over 200 grams of protein a day. I was trying to get with as low a carbohydrates as possible. And that was
And how'd you feel?
miserable every day. I mean, you wake up and it's like, I need to eat 6 eggs this morning, or I need to eat 2 giant, I need to eat 3 or 4 giant hunks of chicken breast 3 or 4 times a day.
You're literally choking that down.
Yeah, and protein shakes too. Yeah, your body is just like, I can't swallow this anymore. And there were protein shakes I was trying to do, and it was just...
How was your energy?
I was pretty tired. And I was wearing out. I mean, and we were trying to do doubles and work out as hard as we could. And again, and this is starting from zero too, I understand, but we went online, and there are all these people on Reddit that, they're posting their pictures, and these dudes just get yoked in like 6 months, and all it took was caring about their macros. And so anyway.
So that's a huge amount. So you're almost at 4 times the recommended amount of protein. If you were at 1.8 to 2 per pound.
Yeah.
So
if we're doubling what you really should have been eating. Yeah.
Mitch comes into your office and tells you that. What do you tell him?
Well, I'll tell him he can be happier and save some money if he cuts his protein in half, and I don't really see any downside.
All right.
Yeah.
So some of the noise you hear: carbs are fattening, low carb diets are healthier, bread, pasta, rice is bad, fruit has sugar in it and that's bad. I mean, the list goes on and on. Thunder, as a nutritionist, when I say carbs to you, what do you think about?
I actually think of carbs in 2 categories. I think of carbs that are natural, that come from plant products, and I think of carbs that are refined and added in the food processing.
And do you find that people tend to think of bread and pasta and rice and sugar as carbs when people talk about carbs? Do they kind of have one idea over the other?
Yeah, to me, it seems like most people, when they talk about carbs, they talk about the processed carbohydrates that are out there. Like you mentioned, breads and rice and pasta and any kind of added sugar that's in foods. I think sometimes people forget that there's carbohydrates in plant products, like if you have beans or if you have any kind of fruit, many kinds of vegetables like carrots, they have carbohydrates. And I think we tend to diminish that a little bit. But those are, the kind of carbohydrates that we need to be seeking out.
Immediately, your first response was, I think of carbs as good carbs and bad carbs.
I don't know if you said that. Do you think of it as good?
I don't know if I said good or bad.
Yeah.
I guess that's how I interpreted it.
Well,
you were like the carbs in foods, and then you were like the carbs that are added to stuff. So you don't think of those as good and bad. You think they're all kind of the same, or do you break them down into good and bad carbs in your mind?
For what it's worth, I think the same.
Yeah.
I think
I guess that's what I heard.
Many of us process carbs as good and bad.
Exactly.
Yeah. And okay. So I would agree with you in the sense that I look at carbohydrates that come from natural, unprocessed sources as more, quote, good, and the carbs that are added in any kind of refining process as bad. And a super simple example is look at, any kind of soft drink. It has carbohydrates in it, but it's, what we would consider a bad carbohydrate because you're just adding a sugar. You're adding high fructose corn syrup versus, the carbohydrates you may find in a piece of multigrain bread. That's made with unrefined flour, or perhaps carbohydrate that's in a sweet potato. So those are different.
So it sounds like really in your mind, you're breaking it down like, okay, yeah, these are kind of the same thing, but you're getting a whole lot more good stuff with these carbs than you are with these carbs.
You're getting a whole lot more good stuff, and probably your dosage is a lot lower too. I think that's the other thing that people sometimes forget about when you look at carbohydrates from a natural source versus an added source. So when you have a typical soft drink, so, we buy 12-ounce cans. Most people actually don't have a 12 ounces of soft drink. They'll get something bigger, whether they get it at a fast food place where they may be getting, 24 ounces or 36 ounces. So they're getting a big dosage. They may be getting 100 grams or more of sugar from that, maybe 120 grams if it's a big enough drink. You compare that against apples, or going back to our sweet potato example, it's going to be, less than what you had in the large soft drink, and it'll be in a matrix that's packed with fiber and other things, so the digestion and absorption is slower. So it's easy to get too much carbs from processed foods because the dosage is higher. For me to get the equivalent dosage, I may have to eat a lot of sweet potato, or I may have to eat 5 apples or something. Most people don't sit down and plow through 5 apples that's equivalent in carbohydrate to a Coke. So here's something one of my students told me. I'll share with you guys. I kind of liked it. When you're thinking about carbohydrates and you're in the grocery store, all the stuff on the edges of the grocery store tend to be better than the things in the middle of the grocery store. And I thought about that. And I thought, hey, he's right. Because like all the cookies and chips and refined stuff tends to be in the middle in the boxes, and all the produce tends to be at the edges of the grocery store. So
your shopping mantra should be live on the fringe.
Live on the fringe.
Live on the fringe.
The closer it is to the plant that it came from, the better that carbohydrate is. That's the bottom line.
Really, it should be the easiest show of the season if you believe what the internet says, because the internet says fat is evil. Fat will make you fat. It increases your cholesterol. It causes heart disease. You shouldn't eat it. You should go get the low fat and fat free foods instead. But that might not necessarily be the truth. So, all right. I want you to pretend you're looking out, because I know you teach as well. And you see your student Scott in the middle of one of the rows.
Is he on his phone again?
No, he's not. But he's like saturated, polysaturated. Make it simple.
What's good and what's bad? Keep it simple.
And it's so hard to say what's good and what's bad, because a lot of the effects of fat are going to depend on the context of what you're eating in general. Take saturated fat, for example. So if you look at ground beef, which is a source of saturated fat, okay, most people say, hamburgers have saturated fat. True. So there's different kinds of saturated fat in there. There's one kind that has been shown experimentally that it could raise your LDL. It could also raise your HDL, which is good. But there's another kind of saturated fat in that same ground beef that doesn't raise your LDL at all. So it's kind of hard to say this is all good, this is all evil, because of those subtle differences. Okay, now having said that, to make the simple version, the fats you get from plants tend to be more healthy. Okay, the fats we get from animals tend to be more unhealthy, and especially when it's in the context of fast food, right? So the same saturated fat that's in fast food, if I have a little bit of it and it's maybe as part of meat or chicken, and there's a lot of vegetables that I'm eating with it, may not be a bad thing. But then when I take that fat and I put it like in a supersized meal, now it's with all this other stuff that as a package can make it bad. So I guess 2 rules. Let me try to summarize this simply. Fat that's in its natural state with unprocessed foods is not that bad. And when we take saturated fat and we put it in the context of processed foods, right? So think bacon, think fast food, stuff like that, that is bad. So that's the simple version of it.
But what about this, that when I eat a lot of fat, it's going to make me fat? Is that true?
That is not necessarily true. Kind of depends on how long you're eating and how much you're eating, but generally not true.
All right, one of the dangers when you're eating is hidden sugars. So we've talked about sugars, refined sugars, how it's easy to eat a lot of them, which gets you a lot of calories, which then could cause you to gain weight. Plus, there's also other negative health benefits around those types of added sugars to foods. So we're going to play a little game called How Much Hidden Sugar? And Thunder has come in with 5 different food choices. And Troy, you and I are going to try to guess how much hidden sugar is in these food items that many people might consider healthy.
Yeah, and these are pretty much all food items that I eat and I consider healthy. So I'm really curious what we're going to find on these.
All right, so how much hidden sugar, Thunder? What are we going to start with here?
We're going to start with something that most people consume every day, and that is bread. So if you think about your typical slice of grocery store white bread.
Added sugar. I've never thought of added sugar in bread.
Nope,
and if
me
someone
either.
asked me, I'd say no, there's no added sugar.
I would have said no as well.
So I'm going to say, now that we're asking the question, in 2 slices, I'm going to say 4 grams then, 1 teaspoonful.
I'm going to say 1 in each, so I'm going to go 8 grams, 2 teaspoons.
We're closer to Troy. It's actually 3 grams, which is about a teaspoon. A little less than a teaspoon.
Still, I'm surprised. Like I said, because we're doing this, I assume there's hidden sugar. If you'd asked me prior to this, I would have said no.
Number 2, the game is called How Much Hidden Sugar? What's your second one?
So this is in honor of Troy because he is a top fan.
Oh, we can't say that.
How much hidden sugar in a bean burrito?
Can we say top?
We could beep it out.
Okay.
But every time you say I have to hit the beep button. So if we could stop now, that would be great.
Let's just say I'm a fast food Mexican restaurant, very popular Mexican restaurant fan.
Okay.
It is one of my favorite places to go if I am going out for fast food. And
All right.
I consider it a healthy option compared to other fast food.
Okay, so a bean burrito from this particular
at this
establishment.
particular establishment. Prior to this, I would have said none. Again, kind of like the bread thing. I don't think of it as having sugar. I think of it as relatively healthy.
Yeah, because you wouldn't think inside it's got beans.
It's got beans,
right? Cheese.
It's got cheese,
lettuce.
and that's it. No,
Oh, no
it's
lettuce.
bean and cheese. It's very simple.
You got the tortilla, so there's probably some sugar, hidden sugar in that.
Okay, maybe that's where there's hidden sugar.
Yeah. All right.
So again, I'm going to go with the bread answer, and it was 3 grams and 2 slices of bread. So I'm going to say 2 grams because we're talking about just one tortilla.
My strategy is to always double what you say. I'm going to say 4 grams.
You're going to double my
Okay,
number.
You guys are both closest, right in the middle, 3 grams.
3 grams again.
The
It's 3
question
grams.
I would ask is, do you just eat one bean burrito or more than one?
Oh, it's at least 2.
Okay.
It's at least 2.
Yeah.
So there I'm getting 6
Because they're not
grams.
big.
They're not super big. Yeah, you got to get 2. So right there, you're at 6 grams, 1 teaspoon and a half at that point.
Yeah, yeah. Number 3, everyone's favorite healthy snack, yogurt. So how about a flavored yogurt like strawberry flavored or blueberry flavored
that's
yogurt
good.
that we all like to buy?
Yeah, and it's healthy. You would assume.
One would
It's
assume.
yogurt.
I'm going
Flavored yogurt.
to say there's 3 teaspoons of added sugar. So how many grams is that?
That would be 12 grams.
Oh, I'm going to go higher than that. I'm going to say there's 5 teaspoons of added sugar in that little
Wow.
cup.
20 grams? I was
20
going to say
grams.
10. So I guess we're sticking
20
with our
grams.
pattern. You're going double. I was just going to say 10. So you're saying 20.
Okay, the correct answer is actually 10 grams
Wow,
of added
10
sugar.
grams.
Now, it's going to vary depending on what kind of yogurt you get, what it's flavored with. Vanilla yogurt typically has a lot of sugar, or honey flavored yogurt has a lot. But 10 grams, that is 2.5 teaspoons
Yeah,
And
so
one thing of
in
one
a
thing.
small
Yeah.
container.
So again, visually imagine yourself going over to the white sugar container in your kitchen,
Yeah.
taking 1, taking 2
And a
then-
half.
and a half
Yeah.
into that little small cup and mixing that in. Like you would never think of doing that.
Right.
Yeah, most people, if they put a teaspoon of sugar in like a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, they're thinking, oh, that's a lot of sugar. Okay, number 4, another supposedly healthy food. You guys know the instant oatmeal packets that come in the paper
Right.
packets. You just add water and you got a healthy breakfast.
Yeah, oatmeal's great for your health.
Yep.
You got that good soluble fiber in there, good for your heart, right?
Yep,
So perfect.
That's
Exactly.
right. So think about that paper packet. It doesn't matter what flavor you like, apple, cinnamon, maple, whatever flavor. They're
gotta
all
be
about the
flavored.
same amount of sugar. So how much do you think that has?
I'm going to go again with the yogurt. I'm going to say it's 10 grams.
I'm going to go 6 grams, so 1.5 teaspoons.
Okay. You should have fell back on your strategy of just doubling.
No. So 20
It has
grams?
18 grams. 18
That's
grams. So you're
insane.
talking 4.5 teaspoons of sugar in one of those little paper packets of oatmeal.
That's
Now,
insane.
Do we really just eat one of those for breakfast? Because they're
There's not
pretty
much in there.
small.
Yeah.
A lot of times, people eat 2.
Right.
So now you're
Wow.
doubling that. You're at 36 grams of sugar.
So that's 9
And
teaspoons.
you're looking at 9 teaspoons of sugar.
So 9 teaspoons. That's my breakfast. Just eating some
yeah.
sugar.
Just put
That's
9
crazy.
teaspoons in a bowl and go crazy.
Just as well
Wow.
go get those sugar smacks.
I
mean,
know.
Seriously.
Yeah,
think
exactly.
I think
oatmeal's
those have
like-
6 grams of sugar.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So
a lot
there's less grams. There are less grams of sugar in sugar smacks than there are in flavored oatmeal.
Correct.
All right, how much hidden sugar, number 5?
Okay, energy bars. Everyone loves to have energy bars. They're quick
Oh, yeah.
snacks. You use it when you're, exercising or you're in between meals. So think of a typical energy bar you like.
Yeah, and this is something I used to consume on a regular basis. And then I looked at the amount of sugar in it and I said, wow, I can't believe it. I'm going to say 15 grams.
Okay, good guess.
So 4, 8, 12. So just about 4 teaspoons of sugar.
Yeah, 4 teaspoons in one bar.
I have heard some people say that these things are just about as bad as a candy bar. I'm going to go with 6 teaspoons. So
24 grams.
24 grams.
you guys both underestimated. The
Are
one
you
that we
kidding?
looked up has 31.6 grams of
You gotta be
added
kidding.
sugar. Yeah.
That's
Now,
insane.
that's a
And
lot.
This is
That's a lot.
This is not just some
9
random
9 teaspoons.
energy bar you looked up. This is a brand name, very common energy
Correct.
bar
Brand
that I have
name.
consumed on a regular basis.
First name, pretty close to the beginning of the alphabet.
Exactly. That blows my
bet
mind.
most people out there have had this bar at one time or another. Again, not all of them are going to have this much, but most energy bars do have a pretty substantial amount of added sugar.
So 31 grams.
31 grams.
And that is our winner for
that
the
is our
most
winner.
sugar
That's our winner.
of everything we've talked
Okay,
about. That's crazy.
One other thing I wanted to add to this. So we talked about white bread, bean burrito, a flavored yogurt, a flavored oatmeal bar. It's entirely possible somebody would eat all of these foods in one day because
Yeah.
none of them seem to be too outrageous.
Yeah, so
Right.
let's add that up,
66 grams of added sugar.
which is how many teaspoons?
16
Teaspoons
teaspoonfuls.
of added sugar. That is a lot.
16 and a half.
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
again, imagine
Yeah.
going to the deal of sugar and just throughout the
16 and a half
day doing
teaspoonfuls.
16 of those
Yeah.
teaspoons.
16.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. I looked up how much added sugar that you should have, and according to the American Heart Association, they say men should only have 9 teaspoons or 150 calories worth in a day.
Right. And we just had these 5 foods that we thought were fairly healthy, and they actually added up to 66.
If you liked anything you heard on today's Best Of episode and want to hear more, a list of episodes featured today is in the show notes. And if you have any questions for specialists or have a story to share, don't hesitate to message us via email at hello@thescoperadio.com. Thanks for listening, and thanks for caring about men's health.